Welcome to the Together We Rise podcast, where women reclaim their power, break cycles of shame, and rise together into lives rooted in freedom, confidence, and authenticity. I am Emmy Soiza, your host and guide on this journey of transformation. We are going to create a world where women feel at home in their bodies, at peace with food, and empowered in their choices. We're going to discuss personal stories of resilience, uncover mindset shifts, and share practical strategies to help you create a life of freedom, peace of mind, and ease. It's time to start cultivating connections and confidence and a culture of women empowering women. I can't wait to be on this journey with you. Together, we rise, one powerful story at a time. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome. Today, I have a very special guest, Agness from Recovery Roadmap, and she's going to be sharing with us her journey through our recovery. She's going to be sharing with us about what she has learned in this experience and so much more. I'm really excited to have you here, Agness. Welcome. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Emmy, for having me here. I'm good. I'm excited, a little bit nervous in a positive way. And I'm very grateful, above all, to be here and share my hope, strength, and experience with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's one of the reasons that really connected me with you, like the first time that I saw you inside the group, and the way you're helping people and the way you're sharing from the heart, and your passion just shine through. Like you could just feel and sense the passion that you have for this. And I said to you before, like we had a little chat, and I said to you that the minute I saw you there and the way you interacting with other people, you reminded me of me. You reminded me of little Amy, 12 years ago, starting this journey as a recovery coach, as a therapist, and just feeling like I just want to save the entire world. I just want to help everybody. And it's, it just made me feel this feeling of like, okay, maybe, it is possible. Like for the longest time, I felt like, maybe there was no hope for me. And I have been told by two therapists and a dietitian that they didn't know what to do with me. And at some point, I gave up on myself too. I thought, well, if the professionals can help me, who's going to help me? And that's when I went on my own journey, like figuring out and trying to find the solutions and find the answers I was after. And after I put all the pieces of the puzzle together and I was recovered for a while, because I don't know if you experienced that, but like in the very first few months, I was like, oh, it's too good to be true. Like it's going to happen again at some point, like there was that like self-doubt, like that fear, like, it's just temporary. Like I'm not going to, this is not going to last. But the moment I had like a solid 6 months and then I had a solid like a year, I still had some ups and downs in those months, I remember, but was nothing compared to how it used to be. And then I saw you like in the group and like coming from this place, and you're going to share more about your journey. And I know you have been recovered for a while, but like just the way you come into the group with this energy and this generosity, wanting to help people and wanting to share with them that's possible. If it's possible for you, it's possible for me too, kind of that vibe. And I really appreciate your presence there and your wisdom there. So that's why I wanted to bring you here today, so we can have a chat and learn more about everything that you've been through, how you recovered, how those last few years have been for you. And now you're starting your own business and you were wanting to help people as well. And I'd love to hear more about that. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your personal journey, your struggles with food, body image, and how's it been for you?
Yes, thank you so much for a beautiful introduction, Emmy. Indeed, I'm in this zone of telling people that recovery is possible, because for 18 years I struggled with bulimia, very severe bulimia, binge eating and compulsive food behaviors. And I've tried everything and I was hopeless. And knowing that now I'm celebrating 6 years of recovery, but thriving, it's not like, okay, it's one day at a time. It's like thriving. I'm so confident in my recovery. And I'm like, okay, now it's the time to share everything that I've gone through in hope of telling people that firstly, you're not alone. I've been there too. And second of all, like there is hope and recovery is possible. So that's the message I'm actually sharing everywhere. Um, and I'm very passionate also about empowering others to heal because I know healing is possible. My relationship with food and body has been both complicated and painful. And I struggled, as I mentioned, with bulimia, binge eating, and compulsive food behaviors for 18 years. And
Oh,
for me, it started very early. Yes, when I was 12. And it all began during a really tough time at home when my parents were getting divorced and my dad was drinking heavily. And things really felt for me as a child very unstable. And my mom was loving and caring and trying to fix things, but there was a lot of chaos, a lot of arguments around, and I felt overwhelmed with all of that. And I thought that if I could be perfect, like get straight A's and never cause any trouble, it would help make things better, right? And so then I started to control things. And it was first with my grades. I was working really hard and trying to score max at my exams. And then it was my body. And I tried to control it in different ways from different angles. So me and my best friend at that time, and let's remember we were still 12, we started looking into different diets and finding weight loss forums online that encourage.
magazines. I don't know if
Yes,
you had that phase. Oh
social
God.
media was
Yeah.
not a thing back then. Social media
Yeah.
was not a thing back then, but indeed, magazines, TV, advertisement, and it really encouraged us to like restrict food. So we started weighing ourselves, thinking that the thinner you are, the happier you are, and the more successful you are. Um, and I was tracking my food. I was controlling everything I was actually eating. Both me and my best friend. And at some point, she stopped doing that. It was too much for her. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's so weak. Like I'm gonna prove that I am resistant and I have willpower. And I continued on my own. And after weeks of restricting, I remember binging for the first time, and I felt out of control, and I couldn't stop eating. And then I freaked out, and I started purging because I was so afraid of gaining weight and ruining my progress. So that's how it started. And in school, also food became my escape. So when I felt like I was too overwhelmed, I would just run to food for comfort. So instead of dealing with my emotions, opening up and talking to people, I wanted to be strong, and I bottled my emotions up. And then when the pressure was too much, I turned to food. I would eat sweets alone in the evening and feeling this sense of relief. Then I felt so much guilt and so much shame that I purged. And that was followed by more restriction, binging and purging again. So I was in this vicious cycle that never stopped. And as I got older, actually, things got worse. I became obsessed with controlling my food, then exercising too much and punishing my body to to fix what I thought was a mistake. So when I went off track, I would try to compensate with
Mm-hmm.
exercising, over exercising. And I think the heaviest thing was that I was in this cycle of shame and guilt. And I hid behind perfection. So on the outside, everything seemed fine. Like I was in a normal weight range, traveling the world and doing my uni and work um, to my biggest capacities and achieving a lot. So nobody knew that I was struggling. Nobody knew that I was completely obsessed with food. Um, so for years, I thought I could handle it on my own. I never shared it. And as we know, shame thrives in secrecy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the longer I went, the more shame there was around this. Um, and bulimia was following me through different parts of my life, through exams and breakups and then career changes. And the more stress there was, um, the more obsessed and I was about food. And you ask about the impact it had on my life. I felt mentally and physically drained. I
Mm.
had no energy for anything. I had anxiety. I struggled with acne. I was very insecure about my face because I had huge acne that I couldn't deal with. I developed gut problems. And really hated my body. And at some point, I was diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So I was in a lot of pain. And that never stopped me from binging and purging. So it was just making things worse. Um, I was constantly fantasizing about a perfect body, a perfect diet, and I
Mm-hmm.
was isolating myself from people because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was so afraid of all of these social events that I could
Mm-hmm.
either not control myself and binge, or I would um, I would restrict and then binge later when I was alone at home. So I felt lonely through my journey. Although I had many friends around me, I had loving family, loving colleagues at work. So there are so many people with me, but nobody actually knew, and I could
Yeah.
never
And
share
that's the
it.
isolation, right? Like that's it.
Yes.
Like you can be surrounded by people, but you just don't feel understood, you don't feel seen, you don't feel validated, and it makes you feel alone, right?
And I
Yeah.
know that if I shared it with my family, they would be loving and caring. But I felt so ashamed that, I was well educated, I was achieving so many things, I was traveling the world, and I couldn't control such a simple thing,
Mm.
eating and food.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
just knowing how deeply I was in bulimia, I was too ashamed, even in front of myself, to admit that I was powerless over food and was controlling my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in my mid 20s, I started looking for different solutions. In my late 20s, it all piled up, and I was so depressed that I promised myself that I'm gonna fully commit myself to finding a solution. And
Mm.
then I realized I needed help, and then I
Mm.
started out to different people, sharing, not in my close circle yet, because I just felt so much shame around that. But I was finding people online that were
Mm.
struggling with the same things, and I was connecting with them. And then this is where my search for solutions started. Um, so many years in active addiction and obsession. Um, and it was difficult, and it was definitely
Mm.
painful. And sometimes when I recall different situations, or even when somebody opens up about their own struggles, um, I get emotional, because I know how it felt. I know how
Mm.
lonely I was. I know how much
Mm-hmm.
shame and guilt there was around. um, and but gladly I recovered, and I'm so grateful for that. Uh,
That's amazing. That's amazing. Just like listening to you here, I was just wondering, when did you acknowledge that there was a problem? Like, do you remember the date? Because I don't know about you, but like for me, I I lived with this eating disorder, just thinking that it was just a willpower issue. Like for the longest time, I thought it was the problem. And same to you, very similar. Your story, like hearing you is like I'm hearing myself. It's like very similar. Mine started with 10 years old as well, and I kind of broke free around like my mid 20s. But I remember that there was this moment, there was like, actually, I think this is way more serious than I am giving credit for. Did you have that moment of realization? Like, when did that come to you?
yes, I did, and I remember it very clearly. So I was in the US. I was traveling in the US, and I found a recovery group. And I went to that recovery group, and I heard people share their experience. And I think the first time I've heard that this is a disease, and this is very serious. And the message I received was, if I don't do anything with that, it's progressive, and I'm gonna get worse and worse. And I was
Mm,
already at that point where I was struggling with acne, with gut health, with anxiety, with depression. And it was a wake up call, like hearing it from people like, look, uh, this is the reality, this is a disease. And I'm the person who is so mindful of my health. So when I heard it, I already got scared. But at the same time, during that recovery meeting, I've heard so many words of encouragement and hope. So on one hand, I was like, okay, that was my wake up moment, when I was like, this is it, this is so serious, I cannot keep doing that because I'm gonna
mhm,
kill myself,
mm,
literally. And that was also combined with this hope and strength that recovery is possible, that I received. So that was like the most memorable moment. But before that,
mm.
there was one moment when I was throwing up with blood. And I remember when I saw the
Wow.
blood for the first time, I got really scared. And I'm very sensitive around receiving injections, seeing blood, like I faint, and I'm very gentle in that area. So that scared me as well, and it pushed me to go to like a recovery meeting. And during that recovery meeting, I got that message when I faced myself, and I was like, "This is too much. Like, I
Mm.
need to start acting on it."
Wow. That's so intense. But it sounds like somehow the group gave you validation. It gave you like, okay, you're not crazy. I don't know how was that for you before, but for me, I used to feel I was just crazy. There was something really wrong with me. And there's something about like understanding what you're going through that just gives you some peace inside. Like at least like maybe you don't have the solutions yet, but at least you get validated in your pain and you understand, the thing has a name and like what you're fighting for. Um,
Yes.
yeah. Wow. That's really, yeah,
And I
really
can
intense.
actually relate to that, because when I was hearing stories and people are sharing like what kind of food they binged, or how they were feeling, or what they were thinking, or when they shared that food was constantly on their mind, like 24/7, calculating, overthinking, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not alone. Like there is nothing
Mm,
wrong with me. It's a disease.
mhm,
And I
mhm,
felt less lonely, because throughout
mhm,
these years, I really thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Like I was
mhm.
crazy. I was like an animal around food. Um, and then I got that permission to actually understand that there are more of us, and there are more people struggling, and it's something that can be fixed.
Absolutely, 100%. And I know there's a lot of like recovery programs, they use the term disease or illness, and that's something I try to avoid because I feel like it only creates this identity of victim. Some people might take that and be like, okay, this is the issue, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm gonna I'm going to beat it, like you can approach this way. But some other people might see the diagnosis and being like, oh, I'm just ill. Like, that's just who I am. You kind of like take that as an identity. So I do try to avoid like the word like disease. And I try to see more as like an addiction, like it's a brain wired habit that it's created by repetition over and over again. And for some of us, like 10, 20, 30, I've seen clients like 40, 50 years, like into this habit. And I think, there's something really powerful about understanding this, but we don't want to just sit back and accept, we want to do something about it. Like, okay, this is what's going on here. Like, what can I do? And sometimes, it might be a meeting, it might be a conversation you have with someone, or might be, nowadays with social media, we have exposed to so many things. Like sometimes you just like that little grain of sand, just like that little insight. I was like, oh, okay, like there is something here and there is a solution. There is something you can do about this. Um, and that's why we're here to discuss today is like, is this like light at the end of the tunnel? Like, how did you get yourself through it? And looking back now, like, do you remember like the initial steps, like things once you figure out like, okay, this is what I have and I have to deal with this right now because this is harming my body, this is damaging my health right now. Do you remember like the steps that you took to just begin like getting yourself out of that like that habit, that um pattern?
Yes, I do actually. And, I think partially it's about my personality. I'm a problem solution girl. So when I've heard that this might be a disease or addiction, I was given some solutions and some directions from people like, oh, maybe try to reach out to a nutritionist or try to reach out to a therapist. So I started actually acting on doing different things. So first of all, I reached out to a nutritionist and I sent her this very long email. I found this lady. She was so loving and caring. She was from Canada. And that was the first time when I opened up about my struggles. And I said, look, for years, I thought I was an expert in food area, but I actually have no idea anymore. Like I'm confused, I'm lost. So I'm starting recovery and I would like to know how to eat and when to eat and eat properly, nourishing meals. And then at the same time, I actually reached out to a therapist. She was a psychologist and also a mentor. And I was telling her all about my struggles, and I asked whether she can help me out. She was a recovery coach, a mentor. She's gone through exactly the same thing as me. She was a recovered bulimic, and she guided me through the steps of recovery. So we were meeting either daily at the beginning and then weekly, discussing like my emotions, my trauma, my insecurities, and everything that came up, my perfectionism as well, everything that piled up through years. And I was too afraid or sometimes even unaware that it was connected with food. So from that experience, I've learned that food is not the problem, it's actually the solution. And
I
and
love
that
that.
was yes, and that was the main actually message that I took from that beautiful collaboration. And then actually I started working with a spiritual guide. So she was actually introducing me to meditation, deep relaxation, breath work. And when actually these three things got combined at some point, I started feeling better because I was
Mm.
moving my body properly. It gave
Mm-hmm.
me energy and clarity, and it helped me thrive. I
Mm.
also moved my body in a loving and caring way and using self-care tools. And by movement, I moved from over exercising to going on walks. to going on hikes, like being in nature, like doing something that is actually nurturing rather than pushing my body and creating more stress. On the mind part, I was healing my emotions, working on the trauma. And on the heart part, I built a deeper connection with myself. I started understanding myself better. And I actually started believing in a higher power that helped me through very difficult times. And some people say it's universe, some people call it God, some people say higher power, like knowing that there is something stronger than me that I can turn to in moments of struggles that really help me. And so
Mm,
I remember like steps by steps, like body, mind, and heart approach.
mm,
When it all clicked, I started thriving. Um,
amazing.
and that's
That's so
why I
amazing.
also preach it so much
I was gonna
everywhere.
ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that, you big on your big three, like mind, body, heart on your business. And I'd love to hear more about your approach, like, maybe like the things that you suggest to people, like what do you consider like being good for the mind, what's good for the body, and what's good for the heart? Like, do you have um like if someone just like starting fresh with you, like what are the main things that you feel that's like essential, like something that it's helpful and it creates that change quickly? Like, is there anything that you feel like it's a must?
Yes. So, first of all, I acknowledge that everyone's journey is personal and very unique. So, I don't really believe in one size fits all approach. So, I meet people individually and I hear their stories. And what I've noticed is that most of us are strict eaters, restrictive eaters. They undereat. So for me, for example, is to break the stigma around healthy food. Like we think clean food, healthy food. Like I prefer to use words like nourishing foods and um, empowering your body with wholesome foods, but also not categorizing foods into bad or good or bad because it fuels
Mm-hmm.
that obsession. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so first of all, I make sure that you are eating enough and you are
Mm,
eating variety of foods, and there is no anxiety around the food. So on the mind part, I say to people, progress, not perfection. So sometimes we start and we are like black and white
so
thinking.
disciplined. Like
Yes,
most
very.
of people that struggle with eating disorders, they think that they have no willpower, but we actually the most disciplined people have ever met in my entire life. Like we're so driven, we're so like if you're gonna do something, we're gonna do it right. And that's like a
Yes.
personality trait that I see amongst all my clients. And it's really deflating and difficult to hear when they feel so defeated by this, because you see like they have this true strength inside of them. They don't lack anything, there's nothing wrong with their willpower. I think it's the opposite. I think like people that struggle with eating disorder, they have way too much willpower. We can override our bodies to a level that takes us into places like this. So
Yes, right. So that's why I
yeah,
say like
yeah.
let go of perfection and and focus on very small steps and small wins. I also encourage people to start journaling, and that's
Mm-hmm.
connected with the mind and heart practice. When I started actually writing about my emotions, how I feel, what's on my mind, like what insecurities and limiting beliefs I had, then I started understanding myself more and I connected
So
certain
powerful.
emotions. Yes, I
Mm,
started connecting certain emotions and feelings with how hungry I was or how much I was snacking. So everything starts in your mind. So I say, what I'm really a big fan of is like morning routine, like creating something nourishing, something loving and caring. And meditation is one part of it. And also, I
mhm.
say, try meditation and try breath work. That really gets you. We are so disconnected with our bodies when we are obsessed with food. Like
Mm.
we don't actually listen to our bodies, we listen to our head, what
Yeah.
the obsession was in. And actually doing meditation is like pausing, like tuning into my body, listening to my body, getting closer to my
Mm.
body, understanding
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So rebuilding that trust in my with my body was so crucial. Breath work helps me, for example, and others relax and feel less anxious around food.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so these are like the first things I recommend, or we do in a journey. But everybody is different. Some people might be very strong spiritually already,
Mm.
but they're lacking, for example, the nourishment
Mm-hmm.
part. Or some
Yes.
people, it might be, yeah, like very like self-aware around food, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but emotions are off track, like they don't know how to
Mm.
deal with emotions. So if
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem, we zoom in and learn how not to turn to food for comfort, how to sit with your emotions, how to feel them, how to work through them. And I've seen so many different patterns, like the victim pattern, I want to save everybody pattern, and then like
It's
stress
a
is.
women thing, right? Yeah.
Yes, right. We
Yeah.
put our
We all want to rescue and save everybody and nurture everybody. Like, yes.
absolutely, and
People pleasers of the world.
yes,
Yeah.
people pleasers, and then it's getting too much. We commit to too many things. Work is
Yeah.
stressful, and then we try to take the edge off with
Mm.
food. So it's very personalized, but there are of course different ways and different
Mm.
tools to use. And lastly, I would say that walks and being in nature is amazing for the body, mind, and heart. I remember spending
100% agree.
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember spending hours at the gym, and it would add up to my anxiety because it is additional stress.
Mm.
And back
Mm-hmm.
then, I was also not eating properly. Now I go on walks. They're very nurturing, very loving, and caring. I have time to think and be with myself and say a
Mm-hmm.
little prayer on my walks, listen to some podcasts. So that
Yeah.
was a
Decompress.
yes.
Yeah. It's very common to see people using healing tools like breath work or, cold plunge and things like that to try to fix the nervous system. I don't like this word, but that's what people use. And then they end up making it worse because the nervous system is already activated, and then they are doing activities that it's activating the nervous system even more instead of bringing down. And then we're looking for like this complicated things, there's like very like biohacking, like things like that. And then you come to this realization that maybe you just need to go for a walk in nature, and it's so
Yes.
basic and it's so simple, but it's so powerful. And I think it does combine with this, more spiritual approach that you have, like this, like something bigger than you. Like there's something about nature that just makes you feel small in a good way. It makes you feel part of something. Like I am just like the tree, it's like the things that compose the tree compose my body, like the components are here too. So there's something spiritual about being in nature and connecting with nature. And I love that you bring this space, like the spirituality, like the bigger vision. And this is something that I'm only now introducing into my membership. Like it's something, I have been focusing more on the mindset, on like the somatic, like releasing, from the body. And the spirituality, I go into it if the client brings it to me, like I don't, like I suggest meditations, I suggest things, but it's not something I, I bring to the conversation because I see people from so many different nationalities and cultures and countries. And I know that, some people have their own way of doing things. So it gets a little like a tricky zone, but
Why?
I
That's why
find,
Yes,
Yeah.
that's sorry for interrupting. That's why I call it body, mind, and heart. I used to use the word spirit, but it did
Mm,
not sit well with some people, and I wouldn't
I
like
hear
them
that.
to be discouraged just
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
of the wording.
Yeah. Yeah,
Please go.
I get why. Yeah, totally understand why you do that. But what I've noticed like this last 12 years working with clients is that the ones that have a belief in something bigger than them, they are the ones more likely to stick to the program, and they are the ones more likely to allow themselves to fail and pick themselves up again. They have more compassion for themselves. Like they believe that something else is in control. They're going to show up and try their best and use the tools in the best of their abilities, but there's something else that is there supporting them and nurturing them as they go along. So I think that's a really important piece. And I'm so glad to hear that you're already implementing this, like in your business, like from the beginning. And this for me is something that I have shied away, for like decades. And only now I feel like I'm being on my own spiritual journey and like maturing this side of myself. And only now, after all this time, I feel like, okay, like now I can bring this to the table, and it can be something that can be, very empowering for people too. And
Yes.
before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. If you had to go back, if you could go back, if that was an option, and talk to your younger self, your 12-year-old little Agnes, sweet little Agnes, what would you tell her? One thing. If you could sit down in front of her and be like, girl, look at me. I need to tell you this. What would you say?
Yes, there are so many things actually
Oh
I would
no.
tell her, but picking one, I will tell her that she does not have to carry everything on her own. She used to be a superwoman, trying to solve all of the traumas, all of the struggles of the world, trying to please everybody. Um, but it's okay. It's okay, Agnes, little Agnes, to ask for help, to actually say it's too much for me. I cannot do it on my own. It's okay to express your struggles, your pain. And most importantly, it's okay to be vulnerable. That's not the weakness, that's your superpower. So that's what I would tell her.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. You could be that person for the younger generation now. You can be the one like shouting from the rooftops, like what's possible, what's available, and what they need to hear in this moment in time. So thank you so much for this interview today. I'm so grateful that you made the time and you're here. And I'm so glad that you were able to share this conversation today and just share those raw, vulnerable stories, because sometimes as we both have experienced, we feel really lonely and we think we're crazy and we think like we're the only ones experiencing this. So my whole intention with the podcast is to bring those experiences and really show people that, it's okay that you're struggling right now. There is a way out and people have been through it. There are actual steps you can go through to get to the place where you want to get to. So I am deeply grateful. So tell us where people can find you online. Do you have a website? Do you have anything on at the moment that you want people to know?
Yes, it's quite fresh, but I'm very proud and glad of having a personal website. It's holisticroadmap.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Holistic Roadmap. And yeah, I also want to say, lastly, that whoever is listening and struggling right now, like, please know you're not alone. And healing is possible. And if I could heal after 18 years of very deep and painful addiction, you can too. So there is hope, and you don't have to do it on your own. Like, share it, reach out for support and help. And please know that there are safe platforms and people that go through the same struggles.
Amen. That was
Yeah, thank you so
beautiful.
much for
Thank
having
you
me
for
here.
sharing. You're
I
so
love
welcome.
I love the conversation and getting
Me
to know you
too.
better and hearing your
Yeah,
story and
me
experience.
too. You went through this for 18 years. I went through this for 15 years. And I think, it takes some true resilience to get to this other side and to look back and to acknowledge the journey we've been through, you know. And I don't think this should go silent. I think the entire world needs to know, you know, because
And you
it's,
know, I'm
yeah,
I'm
it's
so
intense.
proud of turning that pain into something that has a purpose now. So
Hmm.
pain was
Hmm.
turned into like a light. I used to feel as like a victim. Now I feel like it's my superpower. This entire experience, uh,
Amazing.
because I can help others and they can heal.
Absolutely. So beautiful. So we're going to continue this conversation inside the membership now. Agnes will be sharing about her morning and her evening routine, which I'm so excited to hear. So I'm just going to wrap up and say goodbye and thank you for being here. And thanks for watching and thanks for being in this journey with us. We look forward to hear from you. And if you have any comments or if you have any questions for us, please, you can find us on Instagram. You can leave a comment here down below and we're going to get in touch with you. So thank you so, so much. And I see you next time. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with others on their journey. This is going to be so helpful for you and for everybody else. For even deeper conversations and support, make sure to join our Together We Rise Collective. It is our thriving community with exclusive resources, live events, and bonus content to guide you on your journey to food freedom, body acceptance,